Unigenetics is just my word for it. Uses genetic tools and genetic information to address issues important to health. The main goal is to prevent chronic disease by examining interaction between genes and diet. And then it's about the protein products. Now this slide is very important, the key terms and definitions. So I'll go through the slide very slowly. Chromosomes. There are 46 pairs, 46 times 2 in a human body. Each chromosome has got 2,000 or more genes. A genome means a complete set of DNA in a cell. Genomics is a sequencing, assembly, and analysis of structure and function of genome. It's a study of genomes. A gene that is one of those 22,000 in one chromosome is a sequence of nucleotides. It carries the genetic information from father and mother. Everyone has the same genes, that is, their name, things like CYP2R1, but there are different versions depending upon what the father gave and what the mother gave. That's called gene variants, or when a gene is different from most of the other people in the society, is called a variant. It's a form of gene that is depending on slight difference in the nucleotide. Now this word SNP or SNP is the most important. It is that particular area within a gene that carries that particular genetic pair, and that most common form of genetic variation is the example of T replacing a C. When it's supposed to be CC, it becomes CT. That is the most important thing to know, that there are areas where a gene is replaced by slight variant, and that is where problems arise. RS number is the exact area, exact place, standard reference point for that particular SNP. Then genotype refers to the combinations of gene variants. Homozygote means the two copies are of the same type, like AA or CC. By the way, genes are A, C, and T. A, C, G, and T, sorry. Heterozygote is
ये तो बड़ा डीप है रंगी, डीप है ये, अरे बहुत डीप है ये, तो पता नहीं समझ नहीं आ रहा।
Already muted everyone. Who's this?
AC is heterozygote. Risk variant indicates the individual is typical or elevated risk for a certain health outcome depending upon the tolerance under certain dietary conditions. Response variant indicates whether or not the client will respond to a given dietary or fitness product. So these are the terms I'll be using, and as we go along, we'll know about it more. Most genes are inherited as a copy each, one from each parent. The encoded protein of genes have many functions. Genes are composed of sequences of nucleotides A, C, G, and T. Just 4 types and various combinations. So father gives A, mother gives A, father gives C, mother gives C, like that. Or father gives A and mother gives G. That is the variant. Each gene has 2 different forms. For example, G and T, or insert and delete. Now, a particular gene could be extra inserted by father or by mother. and his corresponding place is not there by the other spouse, or it could be deleted. So these are the variants. Some proteins interact with dietary components that we know. Differences in nuclei within a gene produce genetic variants. So single nucleotide polymorphism is equal to SNP, also called SNP. For example, a G replacing a C in CC to make it CG. Also, insertion and deletion of the segments. Evidence and analysis criteria. Since 2000, a lot of research has been done. There's a lot of data being published, and I'll send you at the end of this, there will be a slide of all the bibliographies that I have. There are about 40 papers there, and I'll send you all the list of those 40 papers. We must use the most robust scientific evidence supported by internationally recognized experts, because everybody is trying to make his say in the matter. Genetic markers. Also avoid the risk of using rare incidental findings. Don't go for rare findings by focusing on evidence-based, actionable nutrition and lifestyle changes. And use only certified labs in your country. It is very important to use because it is a very huge money-making market, genetic testing. Therefore, use proper labs. It's a 6-step process here. You have a sample collection into a collection from your mouth. You do it at home. The patient does it at home. He sends it either to you and then you send it to lab, or sometimes we give them a package and he sends it directly to the lab. The lab generates a report, and then you review the report, and then you give advice. And this is where my expertise lies, mainly in talking directly with my patients. I don't have very good connection when I'm talking online, so it has been difficult for me with the COVID not to be able to talk directly. I used to make good income by giving psychotherapy to patients in my office, and that is no longer there. Counseling is no longer there for me right now. But this is the way you have to explain to the person. And what I do is I use a private lab to create, from the report, to create a diet sheet for the patient, exactly for that particular patient. They based on that patient's known dietic needs. And this is an example of vitamin and nutrients, the metabolic angle, and just gives an example of vitamin A, C, D, and B12. I've got 4 separate slides on it. I won't show you there, but what is vitamin A? The risk variant is GG, but the reported variant is AA, so that's okay. Vitamin C, the genes, you've got the name there, GSTT1, and the RS number is there. Deleted, reported is inserted. So risk variant is deleted, but it is inserted, so that's okay. Now in vitamin D, there are 2 different genes there, CP2R1 and GC, and they've got their own SNP area. And there, risk variant is an algorithm between the two, and the variant reported is AA and GG is elevated, and therefore that particular person requires more vitamin D. And vitamin B12 is a gene called FUT2. It's risk variant GG or GA. The variant reported is GA, therefore it is elevated risk, and therefore the person has to get vitamin B12. In other words, if you see a macrocytic anemia and this result is not showing a variant, then there is no point in giving vitamin B12 injections. And these are the A, C, B detailed ones. Now, vitamin A and cancer risk. This is very important because people are buying vitamin E off the counter, but in reality, the GG variant of COMT gene is likely to produce cancer. So do not use vitamin C supplement in people with GG variant of the COMT gene. That is what this slide is showing. And you see the graphs. I want to ask you if you can see the whole slide properly or not.
Dad, we can only see, we can see the slide, but we're seeing your, like, it's not in the presentation view, right? We're just seeing what you're seeing, the same thing that you're seeing on your screen, we can see that.
No, but are you seeing the three different sections of the vertical bars?
Yeah.
Yes, it is clear. No problem. Please go ahead. No problem.
So you have to, instead of blindly prescribing or letting people take vitamin D, vitamin E, you have to make sure that there is no GG variant of the COMT gene.
And what about vitamin D? You have just skipped.
Vitamin D has got two genes, CYP2R1 and GC genes. And then again, is the you see the difference on the charts there. In GG or GA, there is a higher risk of vitamin D deficiency, and therefore they need the thing. I showed it to you in the first slide here also. Vitamin D, the risk variants are AA and GG in the two types.
Okay.
Folate and risk of heart disease. Low folate is linked to increased risk of heart disease. And again, you can see that the gene, the risk variant is CT or TT gene. And you can see the graphs on that of the risk. The CC variant has got less risk in the MTFR gene. You don't have to remember the names of the genes, because when you get your report, it will be all given to you nicely. But what you have to know is understand how to read the report. Because this report was MTHRFI genotype, RS1801133, and then shows the CC at lower level and CC plus CT. Those are the risk variants. Now, this is something that people in India, people in the West, everywhere. I have had patients come in with Myasthenia Gravis that they did not know for 2 and 3 and 4 years. And it's drooping of the eyelids, weakness of muscles, etc. And again, there are two genes there, PMT and MTHFD1. And again, you're doing a recording, so you will be able to see the slides in detail. But this is very important. And myasthenia gravis is very easy to treat, extremely easy to treat, very, very easy to treat. But it must be diagnosed. I suspected for myself that I had myasthenia gravis based on certain symptoms. That was 10 years ago. And the doctor sent me to the hospital where I had a prolonged one-day test. It is free here for me. It cost probably the government $2,000. In fact, this genetic test would have told him whether to do the test or not to do the test. So myasthenia gravis, if you suspect, drooping of eyelids, eyes are closed, eyes are drooping down. That's the first symptom. Calcium and bone fracture risk. This is there, minor, not big one, but still, certain gene, GC gene, has got a elevated bone risk in some patients. There is a childhood at the birth type of illness called fragilitis ossificans. That is, the child is born with some fractures. You can easily see it, and then you can give treatment. Hemochromatosis, iron overload. When you don't need to take iron and people keep on taking iron, they buy it on the shops, I need iron, therefore they take iron. Again, they show relative risk in the genotypes, different genotypes, variance. So you'll have these slides to see later on, and you can compare and see them in detail. Low serum iron, high transferrin. This depend upon 3 different genes. So you have to look at the 3 different genes and the genotypes and try to understand what is happening. It's a bit complicated, but it's an important thing because they're linked to fatigue, pale skin, weakness, shortness of breath, dizziness. Some people utilize iron more efficiently than others, and that is the 3 genes there. Now, I finished with the metabolic there. I'm coming to food intolerance. This is a big thing both in India and in the West. Very, very important item in a medical practice. Lactose intolerance and glucose intolerance. Lactose intolerance, matlab, it's very prominent, the tolerance to milk. You see, there is a lot of people becoming vegan. They're not becoming vegan just because of some kind of a religious conviction, but because they understand, oh, if I become vegan, I will be better. I don't want to have the stomach symptoms. So, because they actually have lactose intolerance, which is very prevalent in India. It's very prevalent in the West here, and it's based on the CC variant of the CCN CT genotypes of MCM6 gene. So MCM6 gene will be reported, and if it is reported with a CT genotype or a CC genotype, then you know on the right you can see how much more likely is the person is becoming lactose intolerant. This is a big thing, money maker for the whole industry. पेट में दर्द हो गया, वो इसको celiac disease है, celiac disease. Give him diet free of gluten. Gluten-free products, I don't know about India, but here, you go to the shops, same item that costs $1 will cost $5 in the gluten-free version. And people, based on symptoms, go and spend a lot of money on gluten-free diet. Or you go to the doctor and he does this pretty expensive tests of IgA, TGA, EMA. So even now the Mayo Clinic has advised, first do the genetic test. And then if the genetics test indicates that this person is likely to have gluten intolerance, then only you do the other test if you want to. Otherwise, you can straight away decide that it's a very complicated thing to understand, but more than 95% of celiac patients say the major incompatibility is called human leukocyte antigen, HEL. And I've tried to understand the details of this, but I'm not able to fully explain to you. But one day I will make sure I understand, and I'll send a paper, little paragraph to you. But gluten intolerance is a big business for the people who are making food products, and therefore it's important to know. Now, caffeine and anxiety. Some people can drink cups of caffeine and are okay. Some people take 2-3 cups and they become very anxious. And it's the TT genotype in Edora 2A TT that makes them very prone to become anxious with caffeine. But caffeine has not moving forward, just a minute. Caffeine and cardiac health. Now there, it's interesting to see in the GG genotype, 2-3 cups a day are actually beneficial compared to 1 cup a day in a GG genotype. But in the GA or AA genotype, 2 to 3 cups a day are harmful. And even 4 cups, more than 4 cups is okay in GG genotype. But in GA and AA genotype, the risk goes up. So people working in offices and everything, they're taking a lot of caffeine, coffee. Coffee break, go and have coffee. Well, there's a risk to cardiac health in certain genotype. So whether you're focusing on the health of the person or focusing on the fact that you want to get him to regulate his coffee intake, it's best to do a genotype and find out CYP1A2 gene, what the genotype is. And if it is GG, he's fine, not to worry. But if it's GA or AA, then he's at risk, taking too much. I had a little discussion with Purviji about type 2 diabetes and organ diet. Again, I can only go by the research, that paper that has been submitted. And there it says that in this particular gene, the GG genotype is okay for high or low intake. But in GT or TT genotype, better to take whole grain diet than to take pure flour, white flour. Sodium intake. You go to the doctor says, you have a high blood pressure, stop taking sodium, don't take salt, don't put salt in your food. In reality, the ACE genotype, the GG, it's okay for him to take the salt. If the GA and AA shows that if he takes more salt, he'll be more at risk. So again, no use punishing. The wife tells the husband, you got high blood pressure, you're not going to take salt. But if he goes, gets his genotype done, and if his GG genotype, it's okay for him to take salt. If it's the other genotype, then yes, the wife is right, and she should stop him from taking salt. Now, polyunsaturated fats, omega-6. This is again big business here in Canada and the States. Every pharmacy you go to, this is prominently displayed on the shelves. Take omega-6. Most of the omega-6 displayed on the shelf is non-veg. And I even had a phone call from England from a friend of mine. Navin, can you find omega-6 that is vegetarian for me? Send it to me. Don't worry about the payment, I'll pay you, like that. Because people are all excited about omega-6. Again, it's the genotype that matters. And depending upon genotype, the omega-6 or the polyunsaturated fat will help or not. Exercise करो वजन कम हो जाएगा. Exercise करो वजन कम हो जाएगा. That's not always true. As you can see from this slide, the FTO genotype, if you can see the difference between AT and TT genotype, and later on you can study the side, because if you want weight reduction with exercise, you'll find people are doing exercise, and nothing happens. And somebody else does exercise, and within no time he has reduced 10 pounds. Now, HDL, if you don't know, HDL is called the good cholesterol. It's the good cholesterol. So you want it high, if possible. It has to be a certain level and more. Mine is on the borderline, but my wife, daughter, they got it high, good. And again, physical activity and HDL are related, but based on the particular gene and the genotype. And this graph shows you the difference between the two. Again, this is something about the LI2C gene. I found it in the literature and I brought it in. It's in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. And it shows very clearly the difference in the action of the different genotypes. And there you not recommend diet, but you recommend physical activity on the level of weight management that is possible with exercise. Now this is important, fat loss. Decreasing the fat in the body or reducing the weight. What do you do? If you take less fat, what will happen? Again, this picture show the two genes, FTO and ADRB2 genes. Don't try to remember these names, it's not important to remember. It's important to look later on at the diagrams here and the way the author has presented, whoever the author is. Anderson et al. Diabetes Journal, of the differences between the genotypes. You will get a list of the bibliograph. There are about 40 of them, and I'll be sending you the list at the end of this talk. So if you're keen on looking, they're all 3 and 4 pages long, each one. So will spend about 2 weeks reading all that. Energy balance. I feel good. I feel energetic. That feeling of being energetic is again dependent on UCP1 gene. And you can see the difference between AA and GG plus G or GA variant. Right? You can AA gives you a better feeling of energy balance than GG or GA. In Canada and in my practice also, I found there are a lot of people who are non-veg, and we're not going to talk about Jainism and non-veg. We're talking about doctor-patient relationship. And if I'm a vegetarian, but that the patient is non-veg, and he says, I am taking non-high protein diet for fat loss, and there is some truth in it in certain genotype, and there is in certain other genotype, it makes it worse, high protein diet. And that has become a big fad. There are clinics here who are giving very high protein diet, red meat diet for fat reduction. And people are going there and getting weight reduction because there is certain genotype. But there are others who say, and these are the people who approach the doctor, I took all this high protein diet for about 3 months and I still have a big tummy. There, there's a different genotype. Low fat diet. Again, a gene. Some people take low fat diet and still don't reduce weight, and some people take low fat diet and reduce their weight. The graphs there show you which happens when. And based on that, and what I do in my practice, I can't remember all these details. The report comes back and tells me that this is the genotype, this is the variant. Then I look it up and I say what it's all about and advise accordingly. And in fact, the report I give it to the dietitian who composes the diet for that patient, sends it to me. Then I make changes in that based on the patient's likes and dislikes and proceed that way. So all this thing doesn't have to be memorized. It has to be understood. This is a big thing. People say in England, the government spent millions and millions of pounds in researching on saturated fat and heart disease. And you know who they were investigating? They were investigating Indians in England. Indians in England were being investigated because of high fat diet. Ghee, you know how we use ghee in India, Indians. And Gujaratis and Punjabis was the target of a big research study. And they cleverly came out in the 1990s with a research study which said all these people are taking too much saturated fat and that is why they're getting heart disease. The reality is in front of you. That depends upon the APOA2 and F3O gene as to how or when you are going to get heart disease from saturated fat. And new papers are coming out which says saturated fat is good for you. So here I am in 1995, a paper has come out. Tell your patients not to take saturated fat. 2015, I get a paper saying saturated fats are good for your patient. What am I to believe? I'm going to believe this. If I do a genetic study, then I'll get some better answer. That's an important issue. That's amazing. Monounsaturated fat in heart. I remember 15, 17 years ago, I used to tell my wife, when you go to the shops, make sure you buy more, see the label monounsaturated on the label. But that again is a general advice, and one type of advice does not fit all. It is dependent upon the gene. And here you see a comparison chart on the PTARY2 gene between the two genotypes. The taste angle and snacking. Every person tastes things differently and affects these things differently to their bodies. And these slides now, taste perception of fat is dependent upon a particular gene. And you can see that the AA genotype of CD36 gene, there's a high taste perception. In the other two, there is no low. So again, you have to realize that somebody eating too much fat, too much butter, too much ghee has got a high taste perception, therefore likes to eat the fat. Same thing applies to taste perception of sugar. It's the GLUT-T gene. And again, you see the comparison of the two. And again, I just want you to concentrate on the differences on your graphs without going into too much detail, because there's not much time into explaining this difference. If you want me to, I'll go into the sugar and fat separately one day if you want me to. But right now, you have to know that there's a difference in taste perception of sugar from one person. And we all know that he has got a sweet tooth, we call it in English. In English, we say he has got a sweet tooth. मतलब कि उसको चीनी चाहिए. And there are others who don't have a sweet tooth. And that is taste perception. Snacking between meals. पत्नी ने ब्रेकफास्ट दिया, वो बोलती है अभी बाजार में कुछ खाना मत खाना. But the husband goes and eats twice before he comes home for lunch. Lunch खाया, बाद में बाजार में और दो तीन दफा पूरी पकौड़ी खाए. That is snacking in between. People go and snack here in between the meals all the time. Again, see the difference between the TT gene and the CC or CT gene genotype in MC4R. So difference in two genotypes makes a difference between the desire to snack, desire to eat in between meals. That's called snacking. Exercise, strong exercise, and cardio matlab marathon running, and that severe exercise. And again, they have different tolerances. I had a patient who came to me, was reasonably fit. I did not know that he was going to go into marathon. I arranged for his test. He didn't come back second visit. I discovered he had gone for a marathon and dropped dead. Literally so. This is a true story of my practice. Marathon and he dropped dead. Because exercise effect is different in different type of people. So if somebody in your family or in your practice is going to, in your friendship, going to go for a marathon-like exercise or things, you should consider that he should do his genetic test before he goes for a marathon. Because it's the amount of how much you feel during exercise. When you're doing strong, very strong exercise, do you feel tired? Do you feel that you've done a lot? And the level of your exercise will depend upon that. All these people are doing marathon. They don't feel tired. There's no exertion. And their genotype will tell you what they are. This is participating in physical activity. I don't know why I put that. Yeah, inclination to participate in physical. You see this in school. The teacher says, Ramesh, why don't you join the exercise with other kids? Why don't you come and do this exercise? Ramesh says, no, teacher, I don't want to do that. That inclination to participate in physical activity, he is not being bad. He's not being contrary. It's his body. His body is telling him that if you participate, you feel very bad. Therefore, he doesn't participate. Then there is no use forcing him, either the parents or the teachers. And this is what it is about. Power after exercise. पहलवान हो गया मैं. Exercise करके मैं पहलवान हो गया. I'm very strong. And some people don't even show their power, although they become very strong. That increase in muscle power, etc., is related to certain genes. And therefore, if a patient comes, doctor, I go on doing exercise, but my muscles don't improve. I ask him to take your shirt off, and there he's very strong. His chest muscles are strong. Everything's good. You say, why are you saying that you're not? Oh, is it okay? He's not aware that his exercise increased the power. I measure his strength in legs and arms, and it's very good. The feeling of the power, he doesn't realize that he has increased his power. Now, this is a very complicated issue, cardio and marathon running. And there are not just these two, but there is two more. Sorry. So there are two genes here, four genes totally in the cardio, and it would require a separate talk to try and understand. Even I would have to reread the 4 or 5 papers that I got it from to really give you the details of cardio. But in general, I don't think any of you are likely to be dealing with people who are going for marathon running. The only marathon you're going to see is 20 or 30 fast, but that is different altogether. Pain sensitivity. सुई लगाई किसी को दर्द हुआ, सुई लगाई किसी को दर्द नहीं हुआ. You go for the COVID injection, vaccination. Husband says, oh, it hurt me. And the wife says, it never hurt me. Pain sensitivity is different from different people, and it's based again on certain genes that you can see in the comparative chart. Now, there are additional genetic insights which we are not going to go into. Magnesium, zinc, starch, vitamin E. Vitamin E already we talked. Few more. Hunger. You can see there's a lot of them, which I'm not going to go in details. It will be, when you look at this, right, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, triglyceride fasting, and you've got a list of the gene involved, the what is good, what is the variant, and things like that. I haven't got any more details of these ones, but I'm informing that there exists studies on their sleep and lifestyle, injury related. So you get your genetic report and you can choose, at least here in Canada, in this case, you've taken the patient's history of dietetic preferences and what he wants. So you ask your report to be health oriented, sport oriented, fertility oriented, vegetarian oriented, plant based, vegan oriented. And you would get that report. So you got different levels. The report comes back in a certain way. Then I give this to my dietitian who prepares a meal out of that report. Then I scrutinize the meal and I convert it from the Western type to Eastern type for an Indian patient. And that is what we do. That recommendations come. And again, this is just a recommendation from the report. It tells you, based on the report I have submitted of what the patient is taking, they say you're taking so many calories. Based on your DNA, you should be taking this much, and we should be taking that much. Carbohydrates, 243 milligrams is your intake. Recommended is 148 to 73. Sugar, etc., etc. These are actually in your report. So it is given hand-feeded to you, all these things, what you submitted for the report, the actual diet intake of the patient. Then based on the report, what they recommend. Then the third part is from that report, you have to create a diet. I'm lazy. So I give the dietitian this task of creating the diet for my patient. The patient pays for it, I don't pay for it. And then I make some modifications based on the patient's cultural and religious background. Because sometimes the dietitians are not very conversant about vegetarian, non-vegetarian, Muslim, Hindu, Jain. So I make that kind of difference for the patient before I call the patient and talk about it. Vitamin A, vitamin intakes. And this is what you'll get out at the end of it, the list of bibliography. I don't know how many are, I said 40, but maybe it's less. Anyway, there's sufficient reading for you for the next 2 months. I can tell you that if you read even 1 or 2 articles, you'll find that they're very, very deep in their thinking. 3 and 4 and 10 pages are the normal in any of these articles. Thank you all for watching the DNA-based dietary recommendation. It is obvious that one-size-fits-all approach to medicine has shortcomings. This was a short presentation, and there's a lot to learn about genetics and how to modify your patient's diet. One needs about 3 to 6 weeks of training and reading to get full understanding for practicing. Thank you again. This is Dr. Navin Mehta of Unicross, Toronto. My email address is given there. I specially created this one. It is unigenetics@gmx.com, unigenetics@gmx.co.in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mehta. It is really very interesting and thought-provoking lecture. Actually, I have not heard anybody is recommending here to do this genetic testing here. But in Ayurveda, it is there. I heard that they are doing. There's a किसी की प्रकृति वात प्रकृति है, किसी की पित्त प्रकृति है, किसी की वात और पित्त मिक्स प्रकृति है. तो everybody, every person is having different body sensation or body reflections. That is very interesting. And now forum is open for the questions. Anybody is interested to ask any question, please raise your hand. There are already two people has raised their hand. Dr. Jeevraj Jain, please go ahead. What is your question, please?
Dr. Saab, it was very nice presentation. Gave a new idea how DNA can affect this one. Now, there are 2-3 questions in my mind. DNA report you get for every patient, taking into account whether he is a vegetarian or non-vegetarian. If that consideration is there, then you have to tell to the laboratory what type of DNA report you want. Is it that way?
Actually, not exactly like that. You've already told the lab that the person's what diet he's taking. So the lab knows from looking at the diet whether the person is a Muslim, Hindu, vegetarian, vegan, because he can see the diet detail.
Okay.
They give the 70-item report without any concern, and then they say he should take so much fat, so much protein. Then the report goes back to you for deciding on the new diet. But what I do is I give it to the dietitian because it's too much headache. The dietitian sometimes goes by the exact thing the patient would like. Quite often the dietitian makes a mistake here and there. So certain people here, certain doctors and clinicians, they let the report go from the dietitian directly to the patient. I don't do that. The report, the dietitian judge, what we do is we pay $20 to the dietitian for creating next 1 month's diet. That comes to me. Then I look at the history of the patient. The patient is Hindu, vegetarian, but he can take kanmur like that. I know that. And the dietitian has, because the dietitian is westernized and just given a plant-based diet, or is given a different type of diet, or has even put pig meat in it. Not often, but the dietitian may do that. It's my job to change all that, keeping in mind that total fat, protein, sugar should remain within the context of what was recommended. Then I call so between the time the patient report comes and the dietitian gets involved, there's a 1 week to 2 week gap. And then I call the patient. Here we charge quite a bit for the patient to come back first time. And we discuss each item of the food. It's a 1 month diet. Sometimes I get, for the first time, I get a 2-week diet, so that after 2 weeks, we get all the patient in again and discuss the diet again. In Canada, every treatment of every kind, the most expensive kind, is free. But this is not free. But also means that patients have got a lot of surplus money to give for private treatment. Therefore, they don't mind coming to the doctor, paying him $70 for half an hour, 40 minutes. And that is how it works. The actual report, the first report is very costly. In India, it's about $10,000 rupees. Here it is $340.
The test report.
Yes, yes.
First
So,
report.
Dr. Bhandari, yeah. Dr. Naren Bhandari also have some
Okay,
question. Please go ahead.
if you permit, in connection with this one, Doctor, you advised me when I was just operated. You told me a good fat diet will enhance probably my recovery fast. So I started taking some fat, but the doctors here, they told me that you don't take any fat. So there was difference, but I was convinced I must take some fat because I got some experience about 50 years back. I was told I should put on some weight. My condition was such, I was weighing 56 kilo, and doctors told me in Germany
Okay.
I should put on some weight or I should take at least eggs, more protein for this one. I didn't do anything. I just changed my attitude. I was hospitalized for 3 months and we used to go for a walk daily, and I was thinking my weight is increasing, my weight is increasing. That was always on the back of mind. You believe me, in 3 months I put on, 3 means 12 weeks, I put on 12 kg weight. When I went to the hospital, I was 56 kilo, came out with 68 kilo. There was no change in the diet. I was taking the same diet except one item, that was they call it quark, that is the कर्ड को बांध करके रखते हैं, पानी निकल जाता है, that is a calcium rich diet. So I used to take that quark, that's all in the evening. Otherwise the same diet, but I put on 12 kg, means 1 kilo per week, that I could increase my weight. So with fat,
Yes.
I am very convinced that it is a different for
Yes.
different people. Somebody can increase the weight and somebody will not have any effect on this one. Now accordingly,
Yes.
people do fasting. Now the fasting also is related to genetic structure, because sadhu, they take only one time meal or 2 times meal. That also you meant here in your slides. That also depends upon the genetic, whether you get feel of taking snacks in between or not. So our sadhus are always, and most of the sadhus, they take 2 times.
Yes.
Some sadhus take only
Yes.
one time meal.
Okay.
And similarly, the pain tolerance, by just thinking, changing our attitude, I am only Gyata Drashta, I don't feel pain in most of the cases. That thing also happens. It may be related to genes also, but then our attitude, if changes, then our this scale also varies. That is what I have experienced. You can probably throw more light on this one. Thank you.
Well, my response to that would be that I am only presenting scientific papers here. I haven't practiced in all the areas that you are talking about. And in fact, I'm not practicing much these days. And because of COVID, my practice of genetic part is also very low. So my idea was to present different genes, how they affect, and personal experiences. I would simply say one size does not fit all. What was good for you may not be good for everybody.
For others. Yes.
What the papers tell us is this is the research they have done, and then other people have reviewed the research and agreed on it, and that is what called scientific collaboration.
Yeah, good. Dr. Bhandari, please ask your question. After that, Dr. Kachara and Nikhilji, and then Dr. Ashok Jain.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mehta, for a very deep insight into this genetics, which is responding differently to food. My question is, can you throw little light on the mechanism? Because I thought this is, very sensitive issue, that how a little change in genes will, respond so differently, that in some people it will create positive effect and in some negative effect. So what is the mechanism? I just wanted to understand, if you can tell me briefly.
In the initial slides, I showed you the exact, that's why I said the SNP is the most important word here. In a chromosome, there are 2,000 genes. In the gene, in one gene, there's an exact location called the SNP, where there is a particular nucleotide. And your food interacts with that particular area in a particular manner. And that is the whole basis of the interaction.
Okay.
I see.
Dr. Kachara Saab, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mehta, for a very illuminating talk. My question first relates to what Dr. Jiraj Mehta has said, that the mental states have a very profound effect on your body processes. And therefore, the entire genetics might change because of mental exercise and mental power. And also spiritual power, which sadhus are doing. And the body is supposed to be a very versatile machine. It has a great adaptability. It adapts to different kinds of food habits. You go to India, to go to village side, countryside, people are hardly eating all these things which would be common, but they are healthy. So how do you explain all these things? That's number one. And second question would be, how do you relate your findings to doctrines of Jainism? That's very important to me, And how do you connect the karma theory to your genetics?
Both the questions that you have are interrelated. First of all, I tried to look for the brain action on the different aspects of food, and there is not much research being done that I can produce before you. So I am not able to tell you how the brain will affect what you eat, etc., etc. Except the taste. I showed you taste, and I showed you the genes relating to snacking. Apart from that, I have no particular information. So as far as connection to Jainism, I try to clarify right in the beginning. I'm a doctor, and even when I was trained to give certain type of diet in my training in India, in my practice here, before I went into a little bit of genetics, was to advise patients on their diet, on modifying their diet without trying to go into Jainism angle. Now, I'll give you an example that is very relevant. This is a true example. A Vaishnava girl, aged 10, went to her doctor. They were friends of mine, the family. And the doctor was convinced about red meat diet. She told the girl, "You are so thin, don't take meat." So the whole family started eating meat. Fine. 20 years later, I happened to go standing in for her. She was sick or away on holiday or something, I did work in her office. And I saw a patient who was totally vegetarian. A local person, totally vegetarian. This was in those days in 1985, it was unheard of, in the white population here. So I asked the patient, why are you vegetarian? Well, my doctor told me, Dr. So-and-so told me. The same doctor who had told this girl to change from vegetarian to non-veg had told this guy to turn. And why? Because she was convinced now that vegetarianism is the best thing. The doctor was convinced. The doctor was a lady doctor. And this is what happens in society. Doctors advise the patients based on what they think is good for the patient, but they sometimes modify based on their own personal convictions. I have to I've kept away from personal conviction and advising the patient like that. I first look at the patient, what he wants to do, what he is eating, and for his health, for whatever he wants to do, how to modify what he is taking without concern about my religion, but I'm concerned about the patient's religion, not my religion when I advise. So that is how I've handled my life.
Thank you. Mr. Nikhil Shah, please ask your question. Yes, after that,
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Ashok Jain and then Vinay Jain.
Okay,
Can you hear
thanks.
me?
Yeah, please wait. Nikhil Shah ji is asking question. Yeah.
So my question is, let's say there is a diabetic patient, which is a big disease in India and US, and regular blood test and urine test does give you quite a bit of insight. And across the world, dietitians are giving various kind of recommendation, insulin and all of that, and the patients are being treated. Now, if the same person goes for this genetic testing, do you think that there'll be some additional insights would be available which would help that person to change some existing diet pattern which is recommended by dietitians and can still help to further cure?
I'll stick right now to type 2 diabetes. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was just asking general, type 1 or type 2, or maybe type 2, you can talk about it.
Type 1
My
and
point
type
is
2 are
just,
very different. Type 2, there is a lot of dietetic advice, and which comes first, chicken or the egg? Now, if you give just the diet and all, and then you try to measure, and you notice the HbA1c is coming down to below 6, you achieved your goal with just the diet. Then you probably don't need genetic testing. But if you're not achieving your goal with the diet you as a physician have thought is good for the patient for type 2 diabetes, and you're not achieving the goal, then you say, well, are you taking your metformin? Are you not? Are you taking your diet properly? And if that is all okay, then you're a bit concerned. Then you look at the genetics and see if the genetics are causing a block in the thinking. And then perhaps you would go for more for whole grain diet. My wife, without thinking, will always buy a multi-grain bread, 10 grain, 15 grain bread. The more grain it says, she'll buy it. Because she thinks that is what is going. She has no diabetes, but she buys that. And when she goes for a test every year, her HbA1c is normal. By the way, in Canada, everything is free, so we can get it done as often as we want. And being a doctor nurse, there is no problem in just telling the doctor, I want this test done. So we get it done. And I myself have got that type 2. Even today, I have not been tested to for genetic, and I'm given some basic instructions on the amount of food, etc. And my HbA1c is 5.7 with my metformin. I'm okay. So in my case, although I can get my genetic test here, $340 test for free, I have not been bothered with it. If it was not improving with diet, then I would do it.
So your point is, Dr. Mehta, that if you get the genetic report, there are some additional insights which will help you to do something different and should help to cure further.
Right.
Yes.
And particularly it's important in, according to that big hospital in America, it's good for celiac disease. Because celiac disease, the gluten-free diet, is a very costly item in the family's budget. Therefore, it's good to do the test to make sure that the person has or does not have celiac disease, whether the person does not or does need gluten-free diet.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Binay Jain, please ask your question, and after that, Dr. Ashok Jain will ask.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Navin ji for a very nice talk. And his talk explains the inter-individual variability, which we very much see in medical practice. Now, what I want to ask is, what is the role of epigenetics? And that is the gene expression changes. For example, Dr. Kachara was mentioning about the mental attitude. Now, it has been shown that belief and mental thinking can change the gene expression. And second question is about the microbiome. Now, recent research has shown that the diversity of the microorganisms in the gut, that is a very important factor in the health as well as in the functioning of the brain. And therefore, the type of diet you eat affects the behavior. For example, the vegetarians, we have shown, are less aggressive on the average than the non-vegetarian children. And this is probably because the vegetarians have a very diverse microbiome as compared to non-vegetarians. And that is how also the immune system depends on it. So the vegetarians will have a better immune system and maybe less prone to COVID-19 like infections. So my question is, how does the gene expression changes affect the health, and how the microbiome can affect the genetic predisposition? Thank you.
Well, after I took this course here, I get bombarded from, I don't know how they found my email address, but I get bombarded with requests to join this course and that course and that course. They're all expensive, $500, $700, $1,000 course. And epigenetics and microbiome, these courses are there. I have refrained from taking these courses mainly because I'm today 85 and I really don't have the strength to go into more details of this thing. I'm just starting to get my genetics item into practice here, and this COVID thing stopped me more or less. So I'm unable to answer your question. I will look it up in a general manner and send an email with the answer on it, but I'm not able to give you a detailed answer. Sorry.
Well, the genetic factor is only part of the inter-individual variability.
No,
The
epigenetics.
inter-individual variable,
No,
genetic part. Epigenetics will explain the rest of it, and also the microbiome.
I have been offered epigenetics course to take, and
Yeah.
I have not taken it simply because I can only cope with so much at a time.
No, I understand that.
So I
But
will look at it in a casual manner and
yeah.
give you an answer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Ashok from Gwalior, please ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Dr. Mehta ji, congratulations and for delivering very nice, unique and very informative lecture. I have one query, and that query is that as you mentioned that before prescribing any medicine or any diet which is rich in vitamin or rich in
I'm not able to hear you properly.
any other type you
आप ऑडियो थोड़ा सा कम नजदीक में आइए. हाँ.
So I want to ask that is it possible in the country like India, where a good number of people they are living below poverty line, a study or analysis of genotypic expression would certainly cost them a lot, and it may not be suitable or bearable for them. So what do you think? And I want to ask whether you whatever you recommended or you told, whether it has started in developed country like USA or Canada or Japan, where you have lived, and what?
Well, there are genetic labs in India who are doing this work for you. The exact 70 test is available in India, and the kind of people who go to the high-priced medical clinics will be able to afford, not everybody. So yes, for the majority of India, it is not valid to be spending 10,000 rupees on the test and then further consultation with the doctors, etc. But there are certain areas. I pointed out Myasthenia Gravis. I pointed out celiac disease. These are the two areas where it may be relevant, because I know that the test they're doing for Myasthenia Gravis, at least here, is a whole day test, a 4-hour test that must cost the government of Canada something like $2,000-3,000. So for Myasthenia Gravis, it would be relevant to do a genetic test. And for celiac disease, it's a lifelong use of gluten-free diet. So it's a costly thing. Every week in your grocery bill, you're spending 4 times more because you're choosing gluten-free. Therefore, it might be worthwhile to do a genetic test.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
I think question is over. Thank you very much, Dr. Navin Mehta. Now it is over to Dr. Pokharna Saab.
Thank you, Dr. Anil Jain, for nicely conducting this lecture, and I am extremely grateful to Dr. Navinji Mehta for a wonderful lecture. Actually, many of the things were totally new for me. I didn't know this, connections between the genetic characteristics and food habits and behavior and all those things. It was a news for me. And you have done extremely good work and published so many papers. So we are actually all very enlightened, and we are very happy that you have accepted our offer to deliver a lecture on this topic. And as the number of questions which have been raised and we have answered, it shows the interest among the audience for this lecture. We want that in future also we will accept our invitation and go into more details as you have actually pointed out on this lecture. So again, I want to give you thanks on the behalf of Jain Academy
of scholars for this wonderful lecture, Mehta Saab. And in the end, I request Chaitanya Pragya ji, I think she is there, to just
Manglik.
start that Mangal, yeah,
प्रज्ञा जी
Mangal
नहीं
part.
नहीं है
नहीं है सर.
Okay. Then I request Kachara Saab. Kachara Saab.
Yes.
Actually, we have some new audience also in today. Dr. V.K. Jain is there. He is a former retired scientist from ISRO, and he has just joined in the end actually. So we welcome him and we request him to actually attend some more lectures of our this academy in future also. So
And Dr. Ashok Jain is also there. Yeah. From
Ashok
Gwalior.
Jain also from Gwalior.
Yes.
I think it will be
Sir,
good. Yeah. So we
body.
welcome him also. And Adrina C, I don't know. It will be good if he just introduces ourselves to us.
I actually think Adrian had to leave. He's from the UK, but I think he had to drop off a little while ago.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
What's your good name?
Manisha.
Manisha. Okay.
Yeah.
My daughter Manisha.
Yeah.
I think your daughter. I see. I see. Okay. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And Sushmaji Singhvi is there. Of course, he is our regular participant. So thank you very much to all of you.
Just information to all, there will be lecture by Dr. Sushma Singhvi in the month end, yeah, Saturday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
ये डॉक्टर कछारा साहब ये मांगलिक
हाँ
तारे मंगलम हरिहंता मंगलम सिद्धा मंगलम साहु मंगलम केवली पनत्तो धमो मंगलम तारे लोगोत्तमा हरिहंता लोगोत्तमा सिद्धा लोगोत्तमा साहु लोगोत्तमा केवली पनत्तो धमो लोगोत्तमा तारि शरणं पवज्जामि हरिहन्ते शरणं पवज्जामि सिद्धे शरणं पवज्जामि साहु शरणं पवज्जामि केवली पन्नतं धम्मं शरणं पवज्जामि.
We have one more participant, Sri Surendra.
Nayak, my very old friend Navin Mehta from Zanzibar.
Oh, I see.
Very nice to hear your talk.
Yeah.
With the doctor
Surendra is from India? Is he from India or where is he? Surendra?
Zanzibar, East Africa. We all grew up together with Dr. Navin and me. My father was a preschool teacher. So I'm in India, yes, Dallas, Texas.
Oh,
okay, okay, okay.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Surendra.
Thank you. Navin bhai, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
you.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you,
also.
everybody. Thank you, everybody. Sir.
Thank
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Purvi, for conducting this session.
It's okay. Thank you, sir. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.